Okay. Welcome to 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester, in which we take books, talk about them in sections, and have fun. We are reading right now James by Percival Everett, and we are in part three of this. We are going up to the end of part one of the book, which is page 188. And then after we finish James in 2 weeks, we're going to be switching over to The Empire of the Senseless by Kathy Acker. Just a plug to buy your copy if you don't already have it. Thought I had it on the table, but I don't, so I can't show you. But really cool book. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox. How are you doing today, Brian?
Doing better than you, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm not well, guys, so we'll see how this goes. I don't think my voice sounds terrible, but I am feverish and exhausted. So we're recording a day late. We're gonna see what we're gonna do. Brian, your
You
background
almost,
looks a
you,
little bit like it's out of The Sopranos this time. Now you're
I'm
really leaning
trying,
into a
I'm
part of
trying.
Jersey life.
Just, I had some a mortadella sandwich, so I'm good to go. I'm ready to go.
What
I don't
what
know.
term do they use when they kill people? Do they ice people? What do they? What's
Sure,
I
yeah.
don't. You gotta go cap some asses or something. And Kaya, you look like you're out of Real Housewives of River Falls, Wisconsin. Is translator of the book
Real
River by Laura
Housewives of.
Vinogradova. That's
Wait
out
a
next
second,
week.
Kaya. What would that show be like? What would the conversations be like at a table of Real Housewives of Wisconsin?
It would be a lot of really snide remarks about each person's preferred quick trip.
Wait, what's a quick trip?
Oh,
It's like a
oh,
it's like a gas station slash
yeah.
you
And
know
It's
Oh,
a
like a
it's a
sheet
gas station
fast
chain
track.
slash a religion slash a lifestyle.
Oh, hey
I've
there,
never been
Peggy.
inside one.
I didn't see you at the PTA meeting, huh?
Where
Yeah.
who has the best cheese curds would be definitely one.
Hmm.
Someone 1,000% some bitch will be cheating at bingo. You know it.
Yeah.
There'll be
You
there'll
know
be
it.
bear pulling at the local West Wing Tavern or West Wind. That's what it is. West Wind Tavern.
Yep. At least we have margaritas on tap. So that's
True.
nice.
This is a fact. There are margaritas on tap. That makes for a good. So I have a sort of quasi maybe apology to make for one of our listeners. We have a fan who I'm not going to name them, but they emailed me a couple weeks ago and they're like, "How come I don't get your announcements anymore about open letter books?" And I went to because everything has switched over to Substack. If you were subscribing to Open Letter before, you are still subscribed, but it's through a different platform because the platform we were using, our distributor started charging $1 billion for, and it sucks. So I switched everyone over. This guy, I went to put him on there, and he had unsubscribed, so it wouldn't let me. It was like you're not allowed to do this. This person is already unsubscribed. So I emailed him back, and he's like, oh, "Okay, I'll resubscribe. I wanted to know what these books, blah blah." And he said, he had checked out The Confidence Man and he was going to reread it, but he listened to the first episode in which we talked about how much we hated Trump for 10 minutes and then started shitting on Philadelphia and he unsubscribed as a result.
Again, unsubscribed again.
No, this is
Oh,
why
that
he
was
had
the first
unsubscribed the
time.
first time. He's like, I guess I'll give it another try and forgive you. But apologies to Philadelphia, I guess. I don't even remember making fun of Philadelphia. I remember making fun of Ohio,
It
who
was
always
maybe
deserves to
because
be
of
fun.
the Super Bowl or something. I don't know.
Was it?
I mean, because they won, it almost like
But that was
I
recent. That's like
yeah.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Not that it makes it right, but I do think we're equal opportunity making fun of places.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wherever we are, we shit on it.
I
Yeah.
mean, Andrew Tate
We
just
will
arrived in Florida, so Florida can get blasted again.
we will shit where we eat, we will shit where you eat, we will shit where everybody eats. We will shit where
Call
your
her all
we
around
will
on this show.
we will shit where your dog and cat eat.
We, speaking of shit where we eat, so Rochester unveiled a Rockopoly this week, Rochester Monopoly, in which one of the squares that you can purchase is a garbage plate. So I'll shit on that. Shit
You
right
get
where I
just
eat.
one plate. You don't even get Nick Tahoe's.
I don't think so. I don't know what you build on any of it because there are no
One's
buildings
enough.
that are worthwhile here. Build a hotel. We have like 4 hotels in this whole city, so I don't know that that even makes sense. I thought there was one other thing I was gonna make fun of on this. Oh no, it wasn't gonna make fun of. We got an announcement. We got a big announcement. So yeah, of course I didn't have this open because I'm professional. We Melville we'd announced a few weeks ago that it was a longlisted for the Republic of Consciousness Prize, which you talked about with Lori Feathers at various points in time, including on this podcast. And it was just announced today that it is shortlisted, along with Like a Sky Inside by Jakuta Alekvakovic, which is
Nailed it.
translated by
Bless you.
yeah, woo! I didn't see that one before I started down that path. By Daniel Levin Becker, Melville by Rodrigo Frazan, translated by Will Vanderheiden, Lesser Ruins by our friend Mark Haber, The Case of Sem by Vera Mutafashiba, translated by Angela Rodell, and Your Absence is Darkness, which is a book that's coming up for my world literature class by Jan Kalman Stephenson, which is translated by Philip Roten. I think that's how you pronounce it. I can't pronounce anyone's name today. I'm sick. Fuck it. Who cares?
Which to say that the Republic of Consciousness Long List Party was recorded last week, and I think it is available for viewing. So if you're interested in going back and seeing it or listening to it, you can not only hear all the author and translator names pronounced correctly, but you can also hear the authors or translators read excerpts from all 10 long-listed titles.
Wait, tell me, I've never, what is this fake prize?
So it started in the UK. This is the US and or North America version. And the UK one started where it was honoring small presses. So it was only
Yeah.
it was so that there was like a prize for the best book. Each small press gets to recommend one. They have to have under a certain level of sales and a certain number of employees, and they get to recommend one book a year. So we have recommended a book every year that it's been running here, except I think one time we missed the deadline. But otherwise, like this was our book for this year was Melville, and so far we're into the finals. And the prize works in an interesting way where the publisher gets a chunk of money of the prize money, as do the author and translator.
Oh,
So
wow.
so it's like and if you get to the short list, that's the maximum amount of prize money. Whoever wins doesn't get more. Like we
That's
all get an
amazing.
equal
Okay.
cut now. So
Well,
yeah, it's to
congratulations then.
support that.
Wow.
So very cool. Very
And
cool
is it
Sounds
the
like a
for
really
only,
cool
is it the
prize.
only, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
I just said it sounds like an amazing prize. That's really, I wish more were kind of set up like that. So I really like what they're doing.
And I
yeah.
was wondering if it was the only one who does that, where, yeah, you get longlisted, you get some pennies, and if you get shortlisted, you get a little more pennies. It's great.
The only one I have ever heard of, and it will be announced. The winner's announced on like March 17th, and that is right before the National Book Critics Circle Award is announced, which Melville is also a finalist for. So we have like two shots. I don't know. I could figure out the odds right now. It'd be like zero point 0.2 times 0.18. It's like a no next to no chance of winning both of them, but like it would be awesome if he won one. That'd be
If
very
only
cool.
this book James could get a prize, you know?
It's
I feel like it just
Nobody
underappreciated.
knows of it though. Nobody's
just
ever
needs a
heard.
little more shine. If only this Percival guy could get a little more traction, I think he could go places.
He could. He truly could. Problem is he's not part of Bronerism, um, which we don't need to talk about right now. I did talk about it during my class today, though. But if you read the Los Angeles Review of Books, there's an article about Bronerism, which truly sounds dirtier every time I speak it aloud.
It's a
And
disgusting word.
I kind of like it though, and like it's mainly about like these big male European books that are 900 pages and nobody can understand them, and therefore they're fucking awesome, and we're all fucking
Mm.
awesome for reading them, and we're so fucking great. And whatever. I don't want to neither defend it nor really get into it right now, except I do hate the marketing of these sort of books and that sort of vibe. Instead of being about the literature, it's about the tokenism of having read it. But
Mm.
the
It's
bros
literary
circling the
fiction that you
wagons.
can read. It's literary fiction you can read in the squat rack of your of the gym. Is this what this is?
Yep,
How
yep,
many
yep.
pages you pushing, bro? 200,
Yeah.
250?
Just a
Just
little
gonna
light
crush
reading.
this
It's
900
my
this.
rest day. Just doing a little light reading on my rest day, bro.
Just reading some jacket today,
It is so funny. It's never female books that are part of this, just to point that out. And that the Lit Bros on Reddit are like truly circling the wagons. It's kind of funny, whatever. You read, like you said, Brian, read whatever you want. Who cares? But like with the marketing and the way that the discourse is these days, a lot of things are like less about the content and more about the form and the like, not tokenism, but the like sort of I can check this off. I am therefore superior.
There's no long list for boys who've read the most pages.
No, I felt like super triggered, like in the MFA, like not having read a David Foster Wallace book. Like I was like this shame. about like, bro, come on, all right, bro, I'll read it. I promise. And like 9 years later, I could finish the footnotes, I think. But yeah,
I mean, and what's funny is I think
You
that part of
mediocre white man.
and super.
you're not being white bro enough. I I don't know. There is something that like I really want to explore this more, and not in like a dismissive way. Like the books that they're talking about frequently have something to them, but like they do have like a weird word sort of marketing to them. But what was I gonna say? There's just there's there's just nothing about the books. I forgot what my train of thought was. That's like a pill action. That's a uh what do you call that? Like NyQuil moment. So skip it. I don't know what I was gonna say. Who cares? Who cares?
Well,
Let them
if you're
read whatever
reading
they
a
want.
book for
Oh,
the,
no, I know what it was. That there's a
yeah,
lack of literary history. Like a lot of these things stand in a void. They're like, this book is coming out. This book is this huge thing. Nobody's ever known this. It's amazing. This is a big thing. But like you go back 10 years and there's books that are like doing similar things or have like other interests and they don't know what those are. And kind of goes back to like where I see in my classes where like classical, classic or like sort of like modernist, high known like authors from like 20 years ago that if you were in school you would know their names. You may not have read them but you'd recognize them. A lot of that doesn't seem to exist anymore. And I think part of it is this like culture that we've created of like only the new and only the next biggest thing. And I think that this kind of idea of Bronerism plays towards that a little bit of like what is the next big crazy thing instead of like oh, you've never read this book from like the 80s. Like nobody's read Making of Americans, but like they're really willing to talk about like Schadenfreude. But like that's kind of the part where I'm like, this is a little there's a little something that this writer's onto. I know he did it to like spark a conversation and like probably get a little bit of the arrows slinging at him, but there is something there that is like in our culture, especially now that everything's fragmented, that is still troublesome or could be investigated, but there's just going to be like knee-jerk reactions no matter what. Just
yeah. I feel like there's like those gateway drug books, like Siddhartha, maybe The Stranger, and then you get into like Jack Kerouac, and it's over. Right? Because then you're mainlining the shit, and then it's like David Foster Wallace, Thomas Pynchon. It's like, oh no, oh no, oh no.
it's just the thing about it's like
You need an
as if like
intervention.
it's as if like literary experimentalism started with like a certain type of translator, and that's just not true, but whatever. I'm also reading at this time because I want to write about a lot of French stuff next month. Is this book on Barbara Wright, and she's like the antithesis to all of this kind of sort of like self-promotional tools that go on today, where she was like super like pleasant and chill, and I met her a few times, and she like worked hard and took advice and was never like I'm translating the greatest authors of the 20th century, but she was translating the greatest authors from French of the 20th century. Like just no ego attached.
Some of
Do
it
you think,
too. Oh, go ahead, Kai.
I was going to say, if is that also just because of the time in which it took place that you don't have, there's not such a wealth of translators when she's starting.
I mean, there are enough, but she's also writing for the TLS on a regular basis, where you do then have that option of like sort of promoting who you want to promote in ways that are like kind of what's happening now. However, less egocentric, I think. But that's not to like again, I apologize to all you lit bros who are listening who identify as such, which I probably none of you identify as such, but if you feel targeted, it's not intentional, but I do think there's something interesting that could be hashed out there and like actually discussed and like fucking literary culture should be broader and more like about fucking books.
I don't know. It's like who like again, who cares? Read what you like. I've read all the lit bro
Yeah.
stuff. I like it. It's cool. Am I a lit bro? Okay, fine. Like, and I've also read the not lit bro stuff, and like, cool. And I've read the predominant black authors. I'm not like, cool, whatever. And I like translated literature. Cool, like whatever. And hashtag women's literature. Like, yeah, I like that too. Cool. Like, just read. Who cares? Read what you want to read. Like, don't like it doesn't have to signal anything. It can just be the joy of reading something. And like, wow, I don't know how to write like this, or wow, this is like a story unlike I've never like heard, or this is an experience I've never lived. Like, just be open, be adventurous, read. You can like it, you can dislike it. Cool. Like the author's not going to care one way or the other.
Yeah.
They just want you to be exposed to their art and you respect the art that they're doing. Cool. Like that's all it is. I don't know why there's always a fight. I don't get it.
I know. I mean, I think this one is like somewhat like about the presentation afterwards. Like his whole article is like you don't
Yeah, yeah,
contextualize anything. You're just like, this is automatically awesome and
yeah.
doesn't actually like approach the book. But I think that like what you're saying is absolutely the truth. I just don't, it also like there's ways in which like it sort of neuters the conversation. Then you're just like, everything's great. Like I'm good for everything. Whereas I think we're
Yeah.
trying to do something where like when we have gone over some of these books that fall into the categories he's talking about, we haven't been always polite about them. Or
No,
like
no.
and actually like use examples of what we don't like. Speaking of,
Yeah. But like
I
for
feel
instance, James, I could see my mom wanting to read this book purely to like signal that like, hey, I'm cool. It's like I'm a white lady, but I'm understanding and I'm hip with the times. Like she might like it, but I could see her reading it like wanting to like maybe in the like maybe the parts of her heart she doesn't actually want to talk about. She wants to signal something to other people.
she's an ally.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Yeah.
Yep.
There's
Which to me is like the most hilarious way to read this book
yeah.
after the minstrel scene that we just have in this. It's like so uncomfortable,
It,
but
Sorry,
it's
you
like
said
it's like perfect.
minstrel or menstrual?
Yeah, that one.
For a split second, I was like, fuck, I read the wrong section
Oh
again.
no, I read the wrong. Yeah.
so
Again.
not and funnily enough, they have this what is it called? Like book sandwiched books or lunch at the library. It's got some dumb title here at the Rochester Public Library where they have
Yeah.
someone come and like lead a book discussion every month. The first one up is James. It's
Sure, of
like in a
course.
couple weeks, so
Yeah. No,
fits.
it makes sense.
Yeah, it totally fits. I mean, and I love. I'm enjoying reading this book. It goes down so again, it goes down smooth, even though it's disturbing. Like it's never like it's very disturbing,
Yeah.
but like it's not like hard to read. I'm not like I don't know what's going on. I need to go back a few pages here or reread that sentence. It's just like it's polished so much that there's almost like no like loose threads or woolly weirdness or anything. It's just like completely that sort of. We had in Michigan, we always got Petoskey stones which are like up in Lake Superior, and they have like a pretty coloring to them. But like when they get them, they're gross and they look dumb. And then you polish them through like machines or whatever, and they come out like all smooth and cool looking. I feel like
Yeah.
this is like the Petoskey stone in some ways. It's like so perfect and beautiful in that way. Like I feel like a lot of hands go into this and a lot of talent.
It's interesting that you say, I'm stuck on the point that you said that it's not a book that you have to go back and reread too much of, but I ran into having to go back and reread in chapter 28, um, because this is where Jim is with the minstrels, not the menstruals, the minstrels, and he starts to it's the chapter that gets a lot into the language of things. So I mean, I'm jumping ahead quite significantly, but I had to like I'm starting to confuse my white people in this section of the book where I wanted to that's what it felt like because he's talking to this guy who turns out to be Cassidy from this minstrel group, but this Cassidy is like he's talking in a way where Jim's not sure if he's being mocked or if Cassidy is practicing something. Um, and then there's the guy Norman who is a very white passing black man, um, who obviously is like knows that Jim is just talking the slave way.
Hmm.
Um, but I had to go back and make sure that like it seems like Cassidy knows something is up also, but I wasn't quite sure. And there are multiple places for me in this. And like with Easter also, where he's like, does the boy know? Where I had to go back and reread just to make sure that I wasn't missing something. And I kind of still feel like I am missing some things. I don't know if you guys,
That's subtext. That's less of like I mean more like on the sentence level, I think, than like the
yeah,
sort of
fair,
interpretive
fair.
level. level.
All right. Thanks for having me on. That's great.
No, but I would. Do you want to talk about both of those things? But I was also going to joke that all white people look alike, so it's hard to tell them different in there. Especially your name
Yeah,
is Emmett and Cassidy. Like, okay,
Cassidy.
what are those?
I
The
like
Duke students from like 1854?
that's why I liked Norman.
Yeah,
But I mean, that's the
my
guy.
name's, my name's Cassidy. I'm like a basketball player. At
That'd be a
I'm
hilarious
Blue
joke though, if
Devil.
like every person Jim meets, it's like, oh, another person smelled somewhat like a wet dog. Anyways, as I went on, it's like the only way you can introduce anybody is like, and smelled faintly of a wet dog. It's quite, that would be the funniest joke ever. Oh
Oh my
man.
God. So to get to your point, Kai, just to give a context to it before you can get into those sections, this one starts where we left off with Huck and Jim or with the Duke and whatever
The
King,
king, yeah.
and they end up
The
beating
dolphin. Yeah, the dolphin.
The dolphin.
Fraudsters.
Also wet, smells a little funky.
Super wet.
Yeah, yeah, fraudsters. They beat the shit out of him. They whip
Mhm.
him, and that is a very hard scene and very much parallels the Little George section where he's getting whipped for the pencil. And he
Mhm.
looks into James's eyes and is like, run. And in this case, Huck caught my eyes telling him to back away. So there's another one of these sections where like the person being beat is making eye contact with the person who's not and like
Yeah.
conveying something. That's how that one's like that guy I'm saying that is not an easy scene to read. But like it's written so well that you very much see it. Like
This
Yes.
whole
and
fucking section was, like I said earlier, anxiety making just from the jump.
yeah, explain your anxiety. You didn't you said that before we recorded.
No, I did, but no, I don't want to do all the talking like when and stop your recap, but from the very beginning where you have these two men who are just like, well, Huck, you're a minor, so you don't get to say like it doesn't matter if Jim belongs to you, he doesn't fucking belong to you. And there's the whole 9/10 of the law
Yeah.
um mentioned and um like then Jim gets beat and then there's this other really weird interaction with Easter's master and
Mhm.
then an even weirder interaction with these minstrels and like
So
just every for me it was like every section down from things like the beatings like the physical anxiety to the mental emotional anxiety when that woman is like in front of Jim's face. And I'm not saying and that's it wasn't like a tenterhook situation, but
that was
every
creepy though.
single every single chapter in this section gave me cause for anxiety of like not just I don't know that I can wrap my head around it, but it's very anxious the entire
I mean,
time.
there are
Very
like it's
purposeful, right?
yeah.
Because like the whole time, Jim's like, I've never been so scared in my life through these
Hmm.
situations, or when he's shackled and he can feel it, and like I've never been shackled before. I can't remember exactly what it says, but it was an experience that he knew in his bones, even though it's not something he's experiencing.
Yeah.
And then Everett does this awesome thing where like right with that, when speaking with Easter was not born into hell. Like he rode the ship to hell. And so
Hmm.
you get this parallel between the two experiences of they're both in hell. Like I was born into hell. I've moved to hell. You know, like I was brought here. And so
Yep.
like it's this wonderful way of making us feel that angst in different ways as it evolves through these chapters. I think it was really well done.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it does go really quickly through like three types of like of or forms of like the
Yep.
slave experience. So him being whipped and being told that he's owned now by the Duke and Dauphin, and then being shackled. I have that line right here, Brian, that you're talking about,
Mhm.
and then being bought by the minstrel show, who then
Yep.
is like, "Well, you're not our slave, but you are indentured to us, more or
Yeah,
less.
you
Like
owe
you owe
us. Yeah.
us for paying for you, so you have to perform for us." And those are like three different slight variations on that. The
Hmm.
shackled thing. Here's the paragraph. He's like. Um, Easter knelt down and put the metal device around my ankle. It was a nostalgic terror that I felt. I couldn't remember when I had last been shackled, but my body recognized the feeling. If ever I was ready to run, it was right then. And
Mhm.
then Easter does let him off and lets him sleep without it, which is cause for concern in the next like bit when everyone comes back and is like, why is he there not shackled up?
And he stays, right?
And he
But it's
stays.
but it's
Like
Yeah,
still, yeah.
yeah,
Which is why it's perfect that this section ends with him running,
yeah.
finally.
right?
Yeah.
Finally, yeah.
Yeah. So the end of chapter one, just to spoil all that, is that he flees and takes off. But the parts that you're talking about the anxiety too. So sort of recap, he has this conversation with Easter. We'll get back to. He then gets bought by the Emmett, which is the guy that created Dixieland and all the songs that we read at the beginning of the book, because he's singing. He's forced because the Duke and Dauphin beat Easter, who's a blacksmith slave for this guy who's like conflicted about slavery. James has to step in for him and do all the blacksmithing, and he's singing. Emmett and his troop come by of blackface minstrel show people, hear him singing, are like, we need a tenor because our tenor is gone. It's hard to find a real tenor. You'll be perfect. And so they buy him out from there to sing. They then have to put him into blackface, even though he's black, to make sure that nobody knows that he's black, which leads to that like triple masking. He's like a black person pretending to be white, pretending to be black. He then sings in one of the minstrel shows. And like you said, Kyle, there's a woman who comes up who's like a little too flirtatious and gets close to the secret and they have to get him away. And then like everything explodes when he wakes up and her dad's like feeling his hair, which is also like real fucking offensive and crazy and like
It's
would be an absolutely terrifying experience to have.
super fucking terrifying. And I mean, there's that part mixed in with I, with this woman's dad, who sounds honestly like a Colonel Sanders character mixed with the Michelin Man, who's obsessed with the idea of this wig being hyper real, right? He's like fat man in a white suit with white hair. Um, and
Boss Hog.
the what?
Boss Hog. I don't know if you
Boss
heard of
hog,
him.
yeah,
Boss
there you go.
hog.
Um, and he's actually it's like Jim keeps so he does keep interacting with slightly nicer and nicer people, but he seems to perceive it as a like sociopathic. He's like, this man is like he's a slave, like Wiley, he's a slave owner, but he's like nice-ish. And then the thing with the minstrels where he's like, this is kind of unhinged. These people are like giving me coffee and giving like being respectful. And the woman at the auditorium who's like doesn't know that he's black, but is still like talking to him like a human, and that freaks him the fuck out. And then you have Colonel Sanders that kind of sullies it, who, sneaks into the tent in the middle of the night and is touching his hair. But the fact that there's a sociopathy to the kindness that you are not privileged to is another thing that gave me that anxiety,
Oh
because
yeah.
he feels so much like fish out of water, because this is a different type of courtesy and a different type of politeness than he's ever been put forth. And he, I think, just sees it as like these people aren't all right. Like it's like, what is that movie? Get Out, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a creepy movie too. The Colonel Sanders thing is funny to me because I just finished proofing The Franchiser by Stanley Elkin, and Colonel Sanders is in there,
Oh
where
yeah.
Ben Flesh meets Colonel Sanders and takes him to like lunch and drives him around. And is like, see, here's we're gonna have a KFC. I want a franchise, blah blah. He's like, I don't know if you're okay to do chicken here. You can't do chicken in this part of the Bronx. There's no like license. He's like going on, and then finally he's like, by the way, I'm not Colonel Sanders. Like I just dress up like this because people think it's cool and they come and talk to me. He's like, this is all bullshit. There's another sort of con, franchise con, corporate con. So
Can
with
we
the
hone in on chapter 24 for a second?
which one's
Mhm.
yeah.
That's where we get this like shift in Huck and James's relationship in this one. So, like in particular, I'll read from page 142, right? So Huck's like, I hate them, Huck said. Easter looked at me and gave a questioning nod towards Huck. He okay, I said. Easter reached into his pocket, pulled out a key. He'll probably sleep better without his chain. Huck laughed. Two keys? So like whatever. So they play the trick where they can unlock James so he can sleep better.
Yeah.
Um, And then we start getting this repetition. So near the bottom of 142, you're right about that, I said. I leaned over to look at Huck's face. He's sound asleep. What's your name? Jim, I said. Pleased to know you. So they start talking because they think, Huck is asleep.
Right.
And then on the next page, he says, I see a lot of things in that face. Do you have water? Buckets over there. Buckets over there. I got up and walked over to the barrel of water. I splashed on my face, cut my hands, looked past the barn doors, yada, yada, yada. Don't mind me, Easter said. Just know that white folks don't see like we do. They can't or they don't want to. I nodded. And so it goes on a little bit longer. And the next page, um, I'm going back to sleep, the boy said. Just one thing. Yeah, Huck? I understand why you talk the way you do. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, it makes sense. I studied his face, right? So he's looking at the face again. He was talking with his eyes closed, as much fighting sleep as losing to it. There was a lot of this in that face. You be a smart boy, Huck. Good night, Jim. Good night, Huck.
Yeah. And this is
What the
when we're
hell's
like,
going on here?
just like right before you said that, I see a lot of things in that face is uh the Easter regarded Huck. What? White boy? Excuse me? Is he white? Easter asked. Look at him. I see a lot of things in that face. I see. So it's like
Yeah.
this implication that he is not purely white, and like that white people don't see the other, like the part black or however it gets put. Or the
And
black
right before
skin.
that, I believe he also, Huck had said something like, I know you probably miss your family a lot, and I usually don't think about that. I think that's really important. He's like, thank you. Like, right.
Yeah.
Right. So Huck's starting to see him a little bit more. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, and I think it connects with this scene that we're having here, where I get the sense that Huck's pretending to be asleep and listening to the two men talk, right? He's
Hmm.
like, he's getting wiser to things or like figuring some things out. But with how much we have with masks, identity,
Representation.
what you signal, right? Uh, there's, I don't know, Kaya, you were saying something about Huck's mom, right? Was I mentioning that when we were talking before we started recording?
Either you or Chad did.
Oh, okay.
It's you then, Brian.
Because there was also that conversation about like, what was my mom like?
Hmm.
Was she pretty? And it's like, I can't say that.
Hmm.
Why? Because she's a white lady. I'm not allowed to, I can't talk to a white, like, well, is this river pretty? Yeah, it is. So then was my mom pretty? Like, well, you know, the river is not a white lady. Like he's like trying to like explain,
Yeah.
like, I'm not allowed to like talk about this, look at this. So there's like this, we already know like he saw some face floating down the river. I'm guessing it's dad. Didn't want to say anything about it.
Yeah.
He doesn't know his mother. Um, and then seeing things in the face, I don't know, like there's a lot of hints that there could be a Jerry Springer moment here,
Jerry
right?
Springer.
Yeah,
Like, or no, that's not
absolutely.
Jerry. Sorry, that's not Maury Povich. Sorry.
Yeah.
I did.
Saying
They
little
both did
kinder,
that.
little less yelling, little less chair throwing.
Yeah. But they both were like paternity
In
test.
the DNA test of Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is the father? The father is, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to you guys talk about it now, I think I would also, my sense is more that with Easter asking like, oh, is that, is he a white boy or like a white kid? And Jim being like, yeah, I think it's also possible because Huck is, I mean, you're not like a stereotypical white person if you start to act like a human and see the humanity in the people you care about. And you like, he cares about Jim and he, point blank understands that the Duke and the King are rude as fuck and they're horrible people. And Jim shouldn't be treated, no one should be treated in that way in any way. And I mean, initially, I think when he's like, "Is that a white boy?" I was like, "Oh, because he's so fucking dirty." Like they've been like on the river in a raft and like through all this shit. So you can't like that sort of experience also sort of washes race a little bit, maybe temporarily, because he's just an exhausted child. Um, but also maybe the disbelief that a white child is, getting prickled about and coming to the defense of a black man. So like really? Like is that
This
kid really
this
really a
gets
white boy?
this
Like
this gets picked up on 150 though, and maybe becomes
yeah.
a bit more specific, in which um, Easter says, "What's the story with you and your boy? Did you teach him how to pass?" What? How to pass? Easter said. Pass? Easter, that boy's whiter than Wiley. Easter smiled at me. That boy doesn't know. Doesn't know what? I asked. I knew both of his parents. Easter shook his head. He winced as his new laceration caused him some pain. He traced it with his finger, and then he go on. And this is one of the times where like a lot of the language becomes a lot more harsh too. Like this is where Duke and Dauphin beat him, and they're like, "Oh, we're sorry for hitting your property." Like the terminology becomes
Yeah.
like that slave terminology where like
Yeah.
in Huck Finn and in earlier parts of this book, there's a little bit of that like escaping for freedom, the sort of joy of like
Mhm.
rebellion and like shenanigans, and now it's back to like that. Like my line of the week, I'll just say it here because I think it's best here, but is on 151 where Easter's like, it's a horrible world. White people try to tell us that everything will be just fine when we go to heaven. My question is, will they be there? If so, I might make other arrangements. Which is like a great line. But that's also where they talk about how it is little George, right? Was
Yeah.
lynched up the river for
Right
stealing a
after that.
pencil,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
they never found a pencil.
That line ties in wonderfully too with they talked about Earth where they're at right now being hell.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's going to be better when you go to heaven. The dude's name happens to be Easter, and just
Yep.
before that, they talk about the Duke and Dolphin. They talk so much without saying anything. They could be preachers,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
so that religious thread, like that anti-religious thread that we've been
Yeah.
seeing, like it really starts getting thicker at this part too.
That's a good point. And like the songs that Emmett makes them sing are supposed to, I think they have are supposed to have that kind of religious undertone in some ways. And those are also weird because they're made up about black experience, slave experience, and yet they didn't write them. And so it's like another like doubling down, and like they have like that kind of like, oh, my redemption will come if I, go through this sort of vibe to them. Fucked up shit, man.
So
World
you
is
guys
dark place.
to go back a little, you guys are then reading that Jim might be Huck's dad or
I don't know. I don't know that that's
that Huck's
possible.
or more so that Huck's dad might have been black.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would make to me it would make more sense
And is that why his dad
If
hated him?
James isn't the father, because there's been
Yeah.
nothing in his character that make me think. Um, I don't know, because like even like when the like even when he's trying to like get away from Polly, like he's very proudly married and he's very
Hmm.
like committed.
Yeah.
That I don't get the sense that I think it's just knowing like I knew his parents, and I think
Yeah.
that that's that, and he knows how to keep secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is
His
also,
whole life is a secret in that
yeah.
way. So
I mean, there was also the comment, was it a week or 2 weeks ago where um Huck was saying basically like why does of all the slaves like my dad hated you the most. There was something
yeah,
where
It's
yep,
true.
like my
great
dad
pickup. Yep.
specifically hated you.
And
Um
if James is writing this book, that's another way to keep secrets.
yeah. Ah.
Like theoretically, like it's an unreliable narrator on some level.
hmm
I do like that they keep telling him to write. Like, is it Easter that's like, oh,
Yeah.
you got a pencil, you better write. And then related
Well,
to
we
that,
mentioned that the week before too, where it's like we were saying that maybe this whole, this pencil part, maybe we said it off air, I can't remember, but the responsibility you have to write your story if there's so much sacrifice for you to have the tools to do so,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
we find out in this section that they killed him
hmm
yeah,
for getting him
yep,
that pencil. Yeah.
yep, for stealing it, even though they never find it. And there's like there too is that the recurring thing of like wanting to get back to your family, like where he's like, I don't,
Mhm.
I want to get enough money to buy my wife and everyone out of slavery. And doesn't Easter too say that he's there, or what someone else does? That they're like, is it
Norman.
Norman? Norman's
hmm
like, yeah, I want to get back to my family. Like I'm going to get back with them, and that's like very powerful and very strong statement too, like breaking people up into you're just on your own out there
Yeah,
instead of having like a family and relate and tearing you away from your family is such a disruptive trauma and such a horrible thing to do and really does like demoralize and dehumanize everyone. Yeah, it's a dark, dark hell that we're in right now.
told you a little bit of anxiety, and considering
Yeah.
what's going on in our country and
And in
all
this book
that.
too.
Yeah. Yep. You can either doom scroll or you can Percival Everett scroll, but either way, it's not a super happy place to be.
What do you mean something's going on in this country? Of what are you speaking?
Of what do you speak?
I don't, yeah. So this is a good section to like, I think to wrap up sort of that part of it. I think I just said this, but maybe this is another medicine moment. But like he does steal the songbook when he runs away. There's
Hmm.
another form of writing and another interesting kind of note on taking that. Um, as he flees. So now like we're gonna go into part two, and I don't know how much of a shift there will be. I in some ways I hope there is because I think that like a three part structure is like interesting and has that ability to like do different acts and different like setups like that and change things slightly. So I'm curious to how that will evolve. I don't really have any big guesses. I don't know if anyone else does as to like what might come next. I didn't want to read ahead for that reason.
It's zero. I have zero guesses.
I mean, we know that he's not going to die if he wrote this book. However, there are big stakes within this book, which makes it also interesting compared to like a different like in Huckleberry Finn, like we know he's not going to die. He's the main character. He's got to like, narrate the book essentially or be the book. But there's really also outside of that, everything always is kind of resolved aside from like the fight between the two families. Things aren't like, they're resolved in ways that are not as damaging. This character is lynched. People are like in true trouble. And so like the stakes of this and the awareness of that, the reality of the situation is so much higher
Hmm.
than it would be in those other books. And like it really comes through in this one, like you say, the anxiety making of it.
Absolutely.
What else you
All
guys
right.
got?
Lines of the week. Let's wrap this up, Medicine
Yeah,
Head.
I need to go back to sleep.
Medicine Head.
I just said mine. I don't know if I have another one, but I'll look because I marked a bunch of stuff this time. Kaya?
Take it away. Or me? I was gonna let Brian do it. Okay. Mine is on 150, a bit under where you read. And Jim asks Easter, he says, "Are you all right?" And Easter laughed. "What if I'm not? What's going to change? What are you going to do about it? What would all right look like?" His point was well taken.
Hmm,
A good
good
one.
line. I'm going to switch over to 154. Metaphor, I said. That's nearly all we have, Easter said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the pencil, showed it to Easter.
That
Yeah.
that there's also then funny just past that. I have this marked where uh they Norman's like getting in blackface and he's like, well, he's like, you can't get this on your shirt. He smeared the black on my forehead. They even do the cakewalk. But that's how we make fun of them, I said. Yes, but they don't get that. It's lost on them. It's never occurred to them that we might find them mockable. It says double irony, I said. That is amusing. Can one irony negate another? One cancel out the other? Like,
I was
it's
gonna say because
metaphors and irony.
earlier in the
Amazing.
book, James and one of his friends are talking about the drunk man, and they just drink because we can't. And he talked about irony, or can irony
Yeah,
can or
two
yeah,
types of irony.
two types of irony. And then now he's talking about metaphor, and so I just thought it was kind of interesting. We have switched from irony to metaphor, but there's still irony because it's right after that as
And it
well.
is, I mean, it is like those are the kind of the tools. You have the pencil as a tool, so
Hmm.
you can write, you can name yourself, and like you can't deal with reality, you can't change the reality, but you can create metaphor and irony, which are distancing and giving you like, a little bit of like power if you believe in words. Words mean things. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm done. So I don't know. I thought there was
Golf.
more I was going to say, but
You know what? I think words do matter. If you change Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, everything changes.